We're going to be talking to Mark Waldman. He is on the faculty for Loyola Marymount University. We're going to be talking about Beyond Autism, Creativity, Communication, and the Human Brain. Thank you for being here, Mark.
It is my pleasure to be here.
Well, before we get started, what caused your passion onto talking about things regarding the human brain and looking at just how we take things in?
Well, I had too many years of bad therapy, so eventually I thought, if I am crazy, let me go online and start doing research, and I began to read and review about 300 books on psychology and spirituality a year and review them. And I basically discovered that, as far as psychology is concerned, we really don't know how we work. We don't know how our personalities really work. There are 500 different schools of psychology. And so when I began to work with Andy Newberg at the University of Pennsylvania, we began to explore how different forms of spiritual practices affect the human brain. And my research for the last 15 years has been focused on what we can learn from the way the brain functions and how we can take some of that information and create simple exercises and strategies to make our lives more functional, our lives more happy, our lives more productive.
And what does the brain research say about autism?
Well, this is what's very interesting. When you go and look at all of the different studies on autism and the whole spectrum, you find something rather remarkable. There's no consistency whatsoever. It's very clear that each autistic individual, wherever they fall on the spectrum, has a different kind of brain functioning. But because their brain is functioning differently, does that mean there's something wrong? And I don't think so. So if you look at all of the research on this, and I think this is very important for all of your readers to know, because this is going to be true for at least the next 5 or 6 years, we're simply making guesses. And I think the best guess is simply because a person's brain is functioning differently, simply because that person is solving problems in an unusual way, different from the way that you and I might solve that, doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with their brain. But that person may seem odd or unusual to us because they go about problem solving and they go about social interaction in a way that's simply unique and different.
So when you're talking about the different research, about autism and, what about the alternative treatments? I know with my son, mostly all the treatments we've done has been alternative treatments, and it seems to be a lot of them we've had a lot of success with. Some of them we haven't, some of them nothing, So what does the research say about alternative treatments?
Well, there was a 2014 Cochrane study that took a look at all of the autistic research that has been conducted so far, and they found that, for example, music therapy tended to be very effective. And there was another study, a review study, that showed that different forms of sensory and somatic therapies, such as acupuncture and massage and slow body movement and yoga strategies, were also really effective. So I became very interested in the research because I've had several friends of mine who have children with various degrees of autism, and in the work and the research and all of the different programs we've given, we'll oftentimes have students in our programs who fall into the autistic spectrum. And when you look at the research, for example, on music, you begin to see that music is a very highly organized communication strategy. The brain actually views music as if it was its own language. And if you think about it, are you and I composing a symphony right now, or are we just banging on the piano keys of words? So one strategy, and again, when we don't have a particular solution or strategy that we know that works, this is where we begin to experiment and use alternative therapies. What would happen if we were to speak in ways that was more similar to the way in which we might sing or hum a tune? It would cause us to slow down. It would cause us to put more melody and rhythm into our language. And we're beginning to see some evidence that the slower you speak and the more melodically you speak, the more you actually view your words as if they were notes in a symphony, the other person will respond better. And this is true for people with age-related disorders who may be beginning to have some Alzheimer's and dementia. So from my perspective, I'm looking at new ways of communicating that makes it easier for the brain to understand another person.
And so when we're thinking about that, can you give us some examples of how to practice that with our kids and maybe even our spouses?
Yes. And what I want to do is to suggest that if you slow down your speaking, the slower you speak, you might notice that my voice becomes a little bit more melodic. So I'm just kind of moving with my words. I'm carefully selecting them. I'm doing what would be called mindful communication. And this is an area that we've become expertise at. If we teach a person to slow down, to use less words, and pay more attention to verbal cues and facial cues and body language cues, anybody will communicate better with each other. So recently I was out at Southwestern Louisiana University, and we teach a particular type of communication strategy to most people. We have them hold up their hands in front of you. And I'd love you to do this, and I'd love all of our listeners to do this as well. Hold your hands up in front of you right now. Make a fist. With each word you speak, raise one finger. When you run out of 10 fingers, you have to stop talking. Now, we also teach this strategy to our executive MBA students because most people throughout the world speak too fast and speak too long. But brain science has a very interesting discovery. The brain can only really recall about 10 words that we've said. So if you think about it, can you actually recall more than 10 or 20 words of anything I've said so far in our conversation? It's really hard to do. So we have people sit down, face each other, and we have them speak very slowly, which increases neurological comprehension. And you raise one finger with each word. When you run out of fingers, you stop talking. Now, if it takes a few more words than 10, you can go all the way up to 20, but no more. Here's what we're discovering, and this is very anecdotal and experimental at this time, but with students who have autism or Asperger's, if they count out their words on their fingers and I count out my words on my fingers, it turns out that the students will tell us, you know, I had no problem understanding you, and I had no problem conveying to you this amount of information. So you and I can try it right now, Kristen, if you'd like. If your hands are up, okay. I'm going to speak this one sentence with 10 words. I stop, it's your turn.
Okay.
Give me a 10-word sentence. We'll continue this interview for just a couple of minutes, you and I speaking 10 words or less.
Okay. I'm on the spot. Oh goodness. Okay. How many words did I already say?
I'm going to 5. But I just spoke, so it's your turn again.
Oh, wonderful. All right. So you're saying that if I speak less to my son, he could potentially understand more what I am saying.
Exactly. Because we're not overwhelming his brain or our own with too many words. Your turn.
This is going to be a very difficult challenge for me, but one that I will accept.
And for everyone who's listening in who has a regular kid, they will love it and they will hold you to it because kids don't have so many words to speak, and we as parents overwhelm them with language. And isn't this one of the major criticisms or problems that people on the autistic spectrum talk about, that they have difficulty in communication?
Yes, they have a sensory overload that makes it very difficult for them to process too many things at once.
So remember what I said in the beginning, that the brain of an autistic child or adult is functioning differently than ours. But differently doesn't mean that it's a problem or that it's a symptom. Maybe the problem is maybe we are spending way too much time using too many words, talking to everybody, and we're not even aware that they can't follow half of the things we're saying. We know that slowing down, which this exercise forces you to do, increases neural comprehension. Now, when you respond...
I was going to say, I think it also helps them be able to process that. Often I talk about, like the little computer, when you're on a computer, you see the little hourglass. Often I think of their hourglass gets a little stuck sometimes. So the less words, probably the better for them to get through it.
And remember, we're suggesting this in business meetings, that if you have something important to say it in 10 words or less, and then pause, and then watch the other person's face and listen to their tone of voice.
It's definitely not easy, though.
So you see, you are having as much problem as the autistic child, only now the autistic child has the advantage because it's going to be easy for them to speak 10 words and no more. What if our problem is that we've been overwhelming our kids with too many words? That's why we find that all kids love this 10-10 game that we call it. And in business, we simply say, if you're in a conflict situation, for example, you can't speak more than 10 or 20 words. This interferes with your ability to get emotional. It also slows your brain down so that you can select the best words. That's what's really cool about doing this 10-10 game. In about 4 or 5 minutes, I can have 100, we did it with 1,500 people. That's 750 people paired up with each other. And 25% of the people had tears rolling down their faces after about 10 minutes. So I ask, what's going on? And everyone will say the same thing. I'm so amazed at how much more intimate the conversation began when I used only a few words.
Well, it definitely, when you're saying mindfulness, it very much makes you have to stop and really think. Now, do you notice when people do this, it takes longer to get through stuff because they have to pause for minutes at a time to really think about their 10 words?
We're finding that if everyone slows down, when you're in any form of social interaction, it improves the social awareness and the social intimacy with everyone across the spectrum, from the healthiest individuals even to people who have schizophrenia or elderly individuals who have dementia. The slower we speak and the more briefly we speak, the more clearly we're understood by others, and the more it forces your own brain to become more organized. Simple and less is better.
Wonderful. So now that hopefully the people that are listening can try this and maybe first start with their spouse or maybe start with a coworker and I think practice is probably the best way to do this, right?
Yes, and you should do it with about 3 different people to get it down. So I'm suggesting to you that even how you are interviewing me now, you're talking very fast. Sounds like you're from New York or New Jersey.
I'm from Southern California, and I do talk fast. So I'm trying very hard to talk very slow for you to try to play this game.
Right. And even just for me, you're going so fast that it's actually hard for me to follow you, and then I don't quite know how to respond. And of course, everyone knows this. If you go in to see your therapist, they always talk about, they're talking about 25% slower. So we know that the slower you speak, the more the other person feels like they are being listened to. So this is a way to increase empathy, which is another area that people on the spectrum have difficulty with. So I'll take couples who are fighting with each other, have them face each other, and there's several things we've also learned that I think would be very beneficial to all of our listeners. One is, the more you can tune off the excess neural activity in your brain. In other words, when you're feeling really anxious and you're feeling overwhelmed, if I was to put you into a brain scan machine, we would see that there's a tremendous amount of activity going on in your frontal lobes, which is where your communication centers are located. So when we're feeling anxious and overwhelmed, there's too much noise going on in our head. Here's the fastest way to slow down that noise. And this is something I recommend that you try with your kids and with your family members. Do what I call mindful yawning. Do 5 or 6 yawns very slowly. And in between each yawn, just notice how it changes your awareness. Now, Kristen, I'm specifically going to ask you to yawn about 4 times because you're going to find that you're going to automatically speak slower. Go ahead. Yawn right now. I'll yawn with you. And everyone who's listening, I want you to yawn with us, okay? And I'll just take a moment and notice if your awareness has changed. And now do another mindful yawn. And each yawn should become easier, and see if that affects your mood at all. Just take a moment and notice if your mood is changing. Let's do another mindful yawn right now. So, Christian, share with us, what are you noticing? What are you experiencing from doing these yawns?
I know I'm tired, so it's relaxing, but I'm definitely I'm reminded in my body that I'm definitely tired. But I think a lot of the moms out there listening are, when we have special needs children, we definitely are more tired. So definitely I think that's what I'm feeling.
Are you aware that you're talking at almost half the rate of speed that you were for those yawns?
I do, and I'm trying very hard to talk a lot slower for you. So I'm definitely mindful of that. The
more you yawn, the easier it comes to talk slower. As a matter of fact, what's happening with yawning is that you're actually turning off activity in your frontal lobes and your language center. So it makes you more aware, and you end up being in this kind of wordless state of relaxed awareness. That's what mindfulness is.
That's interesting. Now I have a question for you.
Yes.
So as you're talking slower, which I find to be very relaxing, it almost reminds me of when I do meditation. And I have this app on my phone that I use, and the person talks very slow. And it seems to put me in a very relaxed state, and it takes me away from the moment and helps me have more clarity. Now, what I also notice is I could fall asleep during that, like once I get into that very relaxed state. So do you notice when people are doing the exercise of trying to do the 10 words or less, that people get more tired, or do they get more energy? Or is it a little bit of both?
If you're very stressed out, talking very slowly or yawning, will first make you feel how tired you've been. So sometimes people can't stop yawning for about 20 minutes. But yawning actually wakes up the brain. So think about the first thing that any mammal will do, your dog or cat or a lion or a tiger. The first thing they do when they wake up, they do three things. They yawn, they stretch in really slow motion, and then sometimes they start preening themselves. We won't address preening in this particular session. I don't see why we should start licking our paws at the moment. But yes, so when you slow down, you become more aware of the physical state that you're in. I'm going to make a radical suggestion that autistic individuals, and some research that, supports this, are more sensitive to everything. They're more sensitive to noise. They're more sensitive to feelings and sensations. And it just feels like there's too much coming in. If that was true, then if anything you slow down your speech, you slow down your movement, it'll be more easier to integrate the thoughts and feelings and sensations that you're having. Now, I can give you another example.
I've definitely yawned 5 more times since then, just so you know. You're right, you do yawn for a while.
So I'm going to ask you to ask all of our listeners and the people in your organization to experiment with their kids and to give us some feedback on this. What happens if you do really slow, brief talking back and forth? Does it become easier? What happens if you do yawning with your kid? And then one more exercise. If you want to relax the muscles in your body, because again, if you feel like there's too much sensation coming in, the first response is to tighten up your body. So I'll normally ask people, I want you to relax all the muscles in your neck. And what would you say is the easiest way to relax all the muscles in your neck?
To roll your head back and forth for me.
So roll your head in one circle, really slowly, but tell me how many seconds you spend rolling your head.
Maybe 3 on each side.
Now, when you roll your head for 3 seconds, you can't feel anything at all. You're moving way too fast. Here's what I want you to do, and here's what I want all of our listeners to do. I want you to take a full 60 seconds to roll your head just once. Do it so slowly. And you'll notice, now that you're rolling your head really slow, you'll feel all of these tiny little aches and pains. You'll feel so much more than you felt before. And at this speed, your brain can recognize the little tiny aches and pains and send a relaxation signal to that muscle. So all you have to do is roll your head once for 60 seconds. And for nearly everyone, if you roll your head again 10 or 15 minutes from now, you're going to feel far less aches and pains in your neck. So again, this is a form of mindful movement. And this helps support the research showing that doing movement exercises and yoga has proven to be very helpful for children and adults on the autistic spectrum. So I think that's really cool. Super slow stretching and moving, super slow speaking. And again, I want everyone to know that we're teaching this perhaps some of the simplest strategies that we've developed in the School of Mindfulness and have applied to very busy executives. We just ask them to do this for 60 seconds once each hour. We have them close their eyes, yawn a few times, do one super slow stretch, and then do anything that's pleasurable. And then we teach them how to speak slowly with awareness, to watch the other person's face. Most of the time we're just so caught up in our thoughts, that's what causes our own internal anxiety. And then when somebody else watches us, their brain will resonate to the anxiety that we're feeling inside of ourselves. So I'm very, very impressed with what the research has shown when you bring mindfulness practices into the household. It really helps parents, it really helps kids, and it really helps adults as well. So, for example, 100 parents were taught how to do this kind of mindfulness practice, and they were taught to do mindful parenting. And in mindful parenting, what you're doing is you're learning how to interrupt yourself from having negative or anxious thoughts. So imagine right now, you're looking at another person with a problem, and you're feeling bad about that person. That individual's having trouble socializing with others. For most of us, we get upset, we get anxious and irritable, and then we try to fix the problem. Well, one form of mindfulness is to not fix any problem at all, but just to become aware of the situation. We drop all of our labels about it. So imagine for a moment, try this for yourself. Imagine accepting yourself with all of your shortcomings, and that it's all okay. So let's say you're highly anxious, or you're worried, or you're feeling depressed. What happens if you close your eyes and you simply say, I accept myself for as I am, and you allow your depression to be there. You allow your anxiety to be there. When you practice this form of mindfulness strategy, your anxiety drops. Your depression starts to fade. And it's called acceptance and commitment therapy, and also other forms of therapy that have included mindfulness in it. It's one of the most effective ways to get rid of anxiety. So if you, as a parent, can drop your anxiety levels, your child is going to feel safer, more secure, more comfortable. So they had 100 parents do these types of mindfulness exercises, and their parenting skills improved, their parenting styles improved, and perhaps most important, it turns out that parents of autistic children tend to be, and I'm quoting from the study, overly verbose. And so their verbosity slowed down and their own quality of life improved. Then 243 mothers in a different study were taken through a mindfulness-based stress reduction program. That would include that yawning and that super slow stretching that I was describing to you earlier. And again, their anxiety levels went down, depression started to evaporate, they slept better, and they had a greater sense of well-being. In another study, 46 parents participated in another mindfulness practice, and they had less stress, less depression, reported greater life satisfaction. But what was amazing is that the children whose parents participated and took up a mindfulness practice, the children had fewer behavior problems, especially in the areas of attention. So the more we as parents relax and slow down and become more accepting, our children feel less stressed out and are capable of being more attentive. I think that's kind of amazing.
Absolutely. Because we
in
definitely
another
are
study,
we're their role models. They're looking towards us to see, how to live. And so if the parents can do it, it's so great for the child.
But here's what's cool. You can teach mindfulness strategies to your kids as well. 24 parents with ASD, after doing just a brief, 8-week mindfulness class, found improved social I'm reading directly from the study, improved social responsiveness, improved social communication, improved social cognition. They became less preoccupied with their own thoughts, and they became more socially motivated. And when 42 adults with ASD were taken through these mindfulness strategies, they had a significant reduction in depression, anxiety. They stopped ruminating. about their problems, and they also began to feel more positive about their life. So that's why I'm very impressed with the effects of mindfulness, both for the parent, for the child, and for the entire family.
Absolutely. I think it's something that's easy to do, and it doesn't hurt to try it. And now my question is, because I'm actually tired, and is that when I slow down, does that mean that my body is telling me I need to sleep or I need to rest? Is that what some of the results are from what you've experienced?
What I'm saying is that when you are doing speed thinking and speed talking, you're exhausting yourself. So this is a way of making sure that you won't overly stress yourself. So yes, it reduces stress. That allows you to feel how tired you've been. And if you do feel tired and you continue to yawn and stretch, one of two things will happen. Maybe you need to take a nap. That's really good for the human brain.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. I think it's important for the families out there. I know most of us, sleep is a very big issue in the autism community. A lot of families don't get any sleep. They're very stressed out. They have a lot of anxiety. So I hope the listeners are taking notes and really thinking about wanting to apply some of these techniques. Now,
on that note that you just said, let me offer another strategy for parents to use.
Oh, wonderful.
When you're feeling anxious and stressed out, take out a sheet of paper and write down, in 10 words or less, make a bullet point list of all the things you're anxious about. So what, for example, give me some examples of the things that you might put on your list, or what another parent with an autistic child would put on their list. What are some examples of anxious thoughts?
Easy. That's easy. Fighting insurance companies, fighting school districts, trying to find funds for new therapies, experiencing meltdowns with their child, their child not sleeping, their child not pooping, their child having aggression, the child not getting along with their siblings, spouses, if they're married still, having lots of quarrels with their spouse, issues with trying to keep employment, if like they have a 9-to-5 job and let's say their child is having lots of meltdowns at school, and I get a lot of emails about that. The list really goes on and on, trying to get your child to eat certain foods.
So let me show you how to do mindfulness, and then everyone listening can model this.
Okay.
Of that list that you just gave, use your intuition. What would be one of the most significant stressors on the list that you gave for yourself?
Well, that wasn't just my list. That was overall list. But the one for myself...
Well, pick one. Pick one for yourself.
Meltdowns for my son. That's a difficult one.
Okay. Here's what I want you to do, and I think we can all resonate to this as well, so we'll all think of the same thing. Visualize your son melting down in front of you, and I'm going to visualize somebody having a meltdown as well, and I'm going to ask everyone listening to this call to visualize the meltdown. But I want you to also visualize yourself as being in this incredibly deeply relaxed and peaceful place. So are you capable of doing that, Kristen? Can you kind of feel yourself in a peaceful state, watching this person melt down in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. And if you're having trouble with this, one of the interesting things you can do, if you're watching somebody else freaking out or having a hard time, take your fingertips and start to stroke your own palms of your hands and your arms. And you'll feel this very pleasurable sensation. And you cannot feel pleasure and anxiety at the same time. Now notice that you just carry this fantasy through. Here you are, you're deeply relaxed, and your son or your daughter is freaking out, having a hard time, having a meltdown. Do you find that it's easier to think in this state of relaxation about what you might do next?
Yes.
So in this imagination, let's just actually have an imagination. There's your son melting down, and instead of you freaking out, getting uptight about it, you're staying in this deep, mindful state of relaxation. Now ask your intuition. What's the first thing that comes to your mind that you might do that would be helpful to either yourself or your son?
Typically, I try to, and I do this. It's not the out surface. It's the inner feeling I'm feeling. But typically, I try to be the calm in his storm and try to let him know that everything's okay. But inside, I feel sad. I feel kind of like, gosh, I don't want that to happen for him. So you have kind of, I think a lot of parents exhibit things that they want, but they feel a different way.
But mindfulness is not about controlling anything. Mindfulness is about acceptance. So here you are, imagining your son freaking out. Allow that sadness to flow through you. Can you do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there you are sitting there. Sadness is flowing through you, but you're staying very relaxed. What's the next thing your intuition suggests that you do?
Try to help him to just not be so scared.
What would be the easiest, simplest thing to do to help him? First thing that pops into your mind.
Step away from him and give him space.
Yeah. So you give him space. And again, remember, the other person will always be able to feel your emotional state, particularly if you're on the autistic spectrum. So the calmer you are, the more you'll give yourself space, because the moment you get anxious, your own problem-solving centers in your brain begin to shut down. And so this, of course, requires practice, but the cool thing is that you'll have 1,000 times to practice being calm and serene when everything is melting down around you. And it's really the best situation to be in anytime you're in a state of emergency. It never helps us for us to get anxious or freaked out or stressed out. There is no benefit gained from this. The only thing that happens is that we cause the people around us to increase anxiety. The example I like to give is I was once really, really sick one time, and I was passing a kidney stone, which is like giving birth to a 30-pound baby, or so I'm told. And the pain was excruciating. And one of my friends was on the phone with me and was keeping me in this meditation state, very deeply relaxed. I was almost blissful. I could disconnect from the pain. But I had another friend with me, just there to take me to the hospital if I need, and she was wringing her hands and saying, "Oh, are you okay, Mark? Whatever else." Imagine for a moment that you're in terrible turmoil. Which person would you like to have around you? The calm, serene, meditative guru, or the highly anxious, worrisome friend?
Definitely the calm guru.
Yeah. It's just that we forget about that when we're under stress. And so mindfulness is so simple nowadays. There's many, many audio programs that are available now to teach you how to do simple mindfulness awareness exercises and strategies. And if you just make a commitment to do just 5 minutes of mindfulness practice throughout the day, 1 minute, 5 times a day, that's what we find is enough to begin to change your brain in remarkable ways. People who practice mindfulness, their amygdalas, after many years of practice, actually begin to shrink. They have less ability to get anxious or upset or frightened. They actually thicken their neocortex. It means they're going to live longer. It means they have better reasoning skills. But the most exciting part of mindfulness practice is that it strengthens the circuits in our social brain. So these practices of slowing down, becoming more aware of ourselves, becoming more patient and accepting of the people around us who are struggling, we actually end up increasing our social awareness and our social skills. That's why we think it's so important to teach mindfulness and to find variations of mindfulness to adapt the basic strategies to unique situations, because this is how we think we can help everyone with ASD.
I think this is such a wonderful talk and a wonderful interview. I think parents on the call are that are listening can at least have practical tools and strategies to start right now, because hopefully you guys all were listening and working with us doing these techniques. Now, how do people find out more about you?
They can go to my website, which is markrobertwaldman.com. And the mindfulness program, we have a program for adults, and we're beginning to do some experiments with children with ASD and adults with ASD, and that's called NeuroWisdom 101, and there are 58 listening exercises that you can do yourself, with your family members, with your kids, and you can adapt them for special situations. And this gives you a basic training and an understanding of the neuroscience behind mindfulness, and that's available. And you'll see information on that on my website as well, which is markrobertwaldman.com.
Wonderful. And, before we end our call, what's one thing you want to leave parents thinking about and knowing about?
That 90% of every person's worries, fears, and doubts is nothing but a memory pulled out from the past and being projected on the present moment. We're afraid that if we don't do A, B, and C, something terrible is going to happen down the road. What would happen if we suspended the brain's natural propensity to ruminate on fantasies about what the future may hold, if we remind ourselves that 90% of our worries, fears, and doubts are just memories from the past, and we take a moment and we stop and we yawn once, we stretch once, we take one mindful breath in, breathing in and out, just coming back into the present moment for a few seconds, we'll feel more connected with our body, we'll feel more connected to the world around us, the sights, the sounds, the feelings, the sensations. And we can sit in this present moment just for a few moments, and that's enough to organize the brain. And if we bring this mindful state of relaxation into our words, we'll slow down, we'll be more aware, we'll communicate better, we'll listen better, and the other person's brain will improve.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Thank you so much for taking this time and helping so many of our families. I think your work is very needed, and I definitely now know that I'm definitely going to yawn right before I ever do interviews. I think my body is telling me I'm tired. I know I've been going at a very fast pace for quite some time. So I learned a lot on this call as well. So thank you so much for that too.
It's my pleasure.